Hello and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, Daf 55 of Nazir. Let's dive straight in. Let us say this is a parallel to a dispute between the Tanaim, as it is taught. With regard to one who enters the land of the nations, but not on foot, but in a chest, a box or cabinet. So what does that mean? Vishida Teva Gadol. One who enters the land of the nations in a chest, a box or cabinet that does not come into contact with the ground is rendered richly impure, as a moving tent is not considered a tent. The halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rambam Sefer Tahara Hilchot Tumas Meis 11:5. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi deems him richly impure, and Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, deems him pure. What is it not correct to say that they disagree in this regard? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who deems him impure, holds that sages decreed impurity with regard to the air, and Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, holds that the sages decreed impurity with regard to the earth, and consequently he is not impure, as the container prevents him from overlying the impurity. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. This is not necessarily the correct interpretation of their dispute, as one can say that everyone agrees that the decree is regard to the earth, and their dispute concerns only the case of one who enters a chest, a box, or a cabinet. One sage, Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, holds that a moving tent, an item that serves as a tent as a passage over which impurity, is called a tent, and therefore a person who enters the land of the nations in a large container is protected from its impurity. And one sage, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, holds that a moving tent is not called a tent. Consequently, nothing separates this individual from the impurity, and he becomes impure by overlying the land of the nations. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in a Brayta that Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, says a box that is full of utensils that one threw over a corpse in a tent in such a manner that it overlay the corpse is impure? So there's a footnote here. So what does that mean? The commentators explain that the ruling of impurity does not refer to the box itself, but to its contents. In other words, the box does not serve as a barrier protecting its content from impurity. See the Rashash. Some say that this Brayta teaches that a moving tent is not classified as a tent according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Consequently, it does not block impurity, which means that all the vessels above the corpse are themselves considered to be overlying the corpse and therefore rendered impure. If so, this Brayta contradicts the explanation that Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, maintains that a moving tent is considered a tent, which leads the Gemara to provide an alternative interpretation of the dispute commented in Nazir. Others explain that in the reverse manner, that the Brayta offers support for the Gemara's previous interpretation. They maintain that a moving tent refers to a particular category of portable objects, and that there is a difference between a moving tent that is thrown in the air and one that is placed on an animal or carried by people whose feet are on the ground. This Brayta in question proves that according to Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, a moving tent that is placed in one spot and tied to the ground has the state of a tent. Same applies to a chest, a box, or cabinet. Since they are carried on something and connected to the ground, they are treated as a tent positioned in one spot. Consequently, they protect their contents from the impurity, despite the fact that they can be moved to Tosfot. According to his opinion, the phrase "but isn't it taught" should not be read in the form of a question, but as a confirmation. Indeed, it was taught, as in the next usage on this Omid. Likewise, the subsequent rather, which indicates a rejection of the previous interpretation, it must be omitted and replaced by the phrase "if you wish you can say," which introduces an alternative explanation. And everything inside it is also rendered richly impure, as it does not provide the protection of a tent. And if it was placed down and positioned as a tent over a corpse, it is pure, as contents are protected from the impurity. This shows that, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, a moving tent is not considered a tent, which contradicts the above claim. In line of this argument, the Gemara concedes that the previous explanation of the dispute is incorrect. Rather, one must say that everyone agrees that this decree of impurity concerning the land of the nations is with regard to its air. And one says Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, holds that since it is not common for one to move around in an enclosure, the sages did not decree impurity with regard to this case. And one sage, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, holds that although it is not common, the sages nevertheless decreed impurity with regard to it. The Gemara adds, and it is taught in the Tosefton, Aholot 18.5, in accordance with the explanation of the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, one who enters the land of the nations in a chest, a box, or cabinet is richly pure. If he was in a wagon, a karon, So what's a Karen? So if you've got the Steinschatz Gemara, it's on page 248. There's a picture of a Karen, or a wagon, and there's a picture here of a Roman stone relief of a carriage, from the Greek karon, meaning a carriage or wagon used for transporting objects or for travel. Boat or raft, and it's kareya, I think you say that, you see the Hebrew, is kareya, a raft. The Gaonim read this as a iskadaya from the Greek heidia, meaning a raft. The source of the present version comes from the Greek histokaria, which means a mast, a wooden post on which sails are hung. He impure. The difference is that the latter vessels are commonly used to convey people. If you wish, say an alternative explanation of the dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Nazir and Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda. Both agree that the original impurity of the land of the nations is with regard to the earth, and the moving tent is considered a tent. Therefore, the person in question should be richly pure according to both opinions. However, here they disagree with regard to a different issue. They're concerned lest he remove his head. Here too, all the commentators agree that the Gemara retracts its previous answer. However, they dispute the particulars. According to one opinion, both Tanaim agree that the decree of impurity on the land of the nations is with regard to its earth, and a moving tent is considered a tent, which means that if one were to remain in the tent, he would be pure. However, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, disagree with regard to the possibility that one might remove his head and the majority of his body from the container and thereby become impure by serving as a tent over the earth of the land of the nations. The Gemara proceeds to cite a proof from the Baita that even Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, concedes that one who leans his head and the majority of his body into air that overlays the land of the nations impure. See Nishut Rivan. Other commentators maintain that the Brisa is cited to justify the Gemara's distinction between a box on the one hand and a boat or wagon on the other. The question is whether the sages entertain the likelihood that one might remove his head from the container, in which case he becomes impure due to the air. Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, maintains that there is a greater possibility of him doing so on a boat or wagon, where it is uncomfortable to jut one's head out of a box or cabinet. To the Tosfos and the Rosh. Said in the majority of his body from the chest, box or cabinet into there, i.e. the land of the nations. And it is taught likewise in a Baita that Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, says, one who enters the land of the nations in a chest, box or cabinet is pure, unless he actually removes his head or the majority of his body into the land of the nations. By contrast, Rabbi Yehuda renders him richly impure due to consider that one's head might protrude from a container. The Mishnah taught that a Nazirite became richly impure through sources of impurity that do not cause him to forfeit his Naziriteship, including his days of leprosy. Starts counting again from the day of his purification, and his period of impurity does not count toward his Naziriteship. And Chisda said they taught this halacha of a leper only with regard to a short Naziriteship of 30 days, and he shaved his head for purification from leprosy, and therefore he must count an additional 30 days to allow his head to grow sufficiently to shave it for his Naziriteship. However, with regard to a lengthy Naziriteship, when 30 days or more remain in his Naziriteship after having shaved for his leprosy, those days also count toward his term. He need not recount his days as a leper. Rav Sherevia, in the Hebrew, Sherevia, raised an objection from the Mishnah. He starts counting immediately, and he does not negate the earlier days due to them. To what case is the Mishnah referring? If we say it's referring to a short Naziriteship, it requires a 30-day period of hair growth. As he shaved for his purification of his leprosy, he must negate the early days as a practical manner to enable his hair to regrow. Rather, is it not the case that the Mishnah is referring to a lengthy Naziriteship, and nevertheless it teaches he starts counting immediately, which indicates that his time as a leper is not included? Rav Sherevia raised an objection and he resolved it. The Mishnah is referring to a Nazirite of 50 days. So what does that mean? Nazirus Bas Chamishim Yom. According to the explanation, the phrase a short Naziriteship does not refer to the entire length of the vow, which is of no importance with regard to this issue, but to the days remaining for his Naziriteship after shaving for his leprosy. If this period is 30 days or less, it's called a short Naziriteship, and in practice he will necessarily have to observe more days. so that he has 30 days of hair growth. If enough days are left in his Nazirship, he does not have to negate any days for the sake of his hair growth. In a case where he sat and observed 20 days of his vow, and at that point he developed leprosy, in that case he shaves for his leprosy, and he again sits for 30 days as a Nazirite. The problem of 30 days hair growth does not arise in this situation, as at the end of this period there is hair growth for 30 days. Rami Bahama raised an objection from a mission 59b with regard to a Nazirite who has an uncertain impurity from a corpse and whose status as a confirmed leper is uncertain. That's the end of the Omid. Shur Omid, and wish you a very good day and peace in Israel. All the best. Have a Shabbat Tov. Bye.